Hey y'all, it's Diann Bayes, the #1 quester and founder of How Big is Texas? Welcome to my neck of the woods in beautiful Northeast Texas, where the oak woods and prairies converge with the piney woods. At How Big is Texas, I share big miles, big taste, and big adventures in the Lone Star State from my own experiences and those of my friends. Thanks for listening. Now let's get started on today's Texas Quest. A friend of mine who actually took the time to binge listen to my entire podcast a few weeks ago, bless his heart, suggested I start interviewing others from Texas on my podcast. It's something I was planning to do, unbeknownst to him, but I hadn't gotten around to it yet. That said, I still haven't gotten around to it yet, even though I have several people who've agreed to join me in the future. Since the interview idea is a new thing for me, I thought I would try it out on the biggest guinea pig I know. On today's podcast, I'm asking myself Texas-themed questions and answering them. I figure I'm experienced in this area since I've been known to walk around and answer my own questions on occasion. Some might call that behavior dumb as a sack of hammers or 2 bricks shy of a load. Whatever you call it, thanks for joining me for Q&A with Diann and Diann. If I can make this fly, I feel certain I can make it work with other people besides me. What part of Texas did you grow up in? I don't know that I can answer that question completely since I lived in 8 cities and towns by the time I graduated from high school. I've spent more time in the piney woods of East Texas, so I'd lean to that area the most. But I have to give a shout out to the top of the Texas Panhandle since I lived up there for part of elementary school, all of junior high, and some of high school. What was it like growing up in these parts of Texas? I don't remember a lot from my younger years, but back in the day, as I have now been known to say more than I want to admit, things sure seemed a whole lot simpler for kids. I ate at home most of the time since we were a family of 6, didn't have a lot of money, and there were only a handful of restaurants in the towns I grew up in. I took part in a variety of sports, not necessarily because I wanted to, but that was what you did, especially when you had coaches in your family. I attended most sporting events either as a cheerleader, a member of the band, or a participant. Concession stands were run by the parents and consisted of a mix of foods like hot dogs and popcorn, alongside homemade items like German Bierock, Rice Krispie Squares, and brownies. Health inspectors across the country listening to this podcast just cringed at the thought of the public eating something prepared outside of a professional kitchen. I ate many a baked good growing up and lived to tell this tale. We had one TV and it only had 3 channels: ABC, CBS, and NBC. We watched what our parents told us we could watch. I grew up in the 70s with the Carol Burnett Show, Lawrence Welk, and Hee Haw. In the late 70s, The Love Boat and Fantasy Island made their appearances. I've joked that if Mr. Rourke, played by Ricardo Montalban, and cruise director Julie, played by Lauren Tweez, ever got together, I would have been their love child. I credit them for my career in travel and tourism. I visited with my friends by talking directly to their faces and not through a text on a smartphone. Yes, we did have a phone, but it was on what was called a landline, and the phone was attached to the wall. There was no stepping outside to get away from listening ears or texting secrets. I know what some of you younger listeners might be thinking. Oh, the humanity. I played outside a lot, and yes, I did drink from the water hose. I survived my entire childhood not drinking 60 ounces of water per day and don't ever remember any annual physicals where the doctor told me I needed to drink that much water. I'm not sure when that changed, but now I carry around H2O like someone who's waiting to be tossed into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights to survive in the wilderness. Did your family have any annual traditions? One tradition I remember was going to my grandparents' house on my mother's side for either Thanksgiving or Christmas. They lived in a simple, white framed, two-bedroom house near the town of Troop in northeast Texas. My grandmother was a simple cook. The only spices I ever remember seeing in her house were salt, pepper, dried hot pepper pods, and cinnamon. I don't ever remember seeing a spice rack. Grandma was known for her cooking. She made what I consider to be traditional East Texas cuisine: chicken and dumplings, rolled, not dropped, purple hull peas, cornbread, not sweet, collard greens, biscuits, chocolate pie, cornbread dressing, and so much more great tasting food. She also was an excellent candy maker. She would have wonderful divinity, fudge, and peanut brittle, especially during the holidays. Now, my papa was a storyteller, some of them true, most of them exaggerated. He smoked a pipe or a cigar and would regale us with humorous tall tales as we sat outside their house under the pines and oaks. Some of the trees were covered in Spanish moss, which could look creepy at night on the rare occasion that we slept over during a visit. My grandfather, while very hospitable, leaned more towards the idea that fish and company smell after 3 days. Now that I'm in my 60s, I agree with him wholeheartedly. What is your favorite Texas memory? Since we didn't travel a lot as kids, aside from going to visit family or attending a family reunion, I have to say my perimeter trip around the state of Texas in June of 2020 is at the top of the list. It was the beginning of How Big is Texas, and I literally drove around the state. Certainly, there were some roads I could have taken to get closer to the edges, but since I stayed on paved roads, those gravel and dirt roads weren't an option. Seeing more than 3,300 miles of this state I love and have called home almost my entire life will stand out as one of my most precious memories. Having colleagues Deborah and Morgan along for the ride and seeing our friends and family along the way was the icing on the cake. What's the best road trip you've ever taken in Texas? I could repeat my answer with my perimeter tour here, too, but the first time I drove with my husband and our dogs to see the Texas Mountain Trail region of the state was pure magic for me. I thought I had experienced the best that Texas had to offer. I'd seen the beaches, the Rio Grande Valley, Palo Duro Canyon, the hill country, the piney woods. At the age of 50, I saw the mountains of Texas for the very first time. As we drove I-10 past Fort Stockton, the view started to change to the south of us. Though the mountains were more than 150 miles away, they started to come into view, and I understood the meaning of wide open spaces. The Fort Davis Mountains give the town a true mountain town feel. The mountains in Alpine introduce you to what's to come as you drive south to Big Bend National Park, Terlingua, and Lajitas. And driving into Study Butte and Terlingua is almost an otherworldly experience. The people who live here are congenial, but, according to what many told us, they left the big city to get away from people. Living in these mountains certainly accomplishes that. Even though I've worked in the hospitality industry almost my entire life, I understand that desire for serenity and the need to escape. Visiting the Texas mountains truly changed the way I look at much in life. There, you unplug, mostly due to the lack of signal in some areas, then to truly experience the solitude these mountains bring. The only regret I have is I wish I'd visited earlier. When we lived in San Angelo, we were only 3.5 hours from Alpine and made the trip almost quarterly for 5 years. We even toyed with the idea of moving there ourselves, buying 20 acres of land and escaping. Who knows? Maybe that will happen someday. Until then, we'll have to settle with a visit to far west Texas. If you haven't visited yet, take the time to experience it. Fall is coming, and it's a great time of year to see for yourself. Is there a place in Texas you would like to visit that you haven't yet? I've been to all but 3 of the 254 counties in the state of Texas, and I'm hoping to knock those off of my bucket list in the next few months. In the words of the Johnny Cash song, I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere in Texas. In my more seasoned age, I've become more of a bird lover, so spending time in the Rio Grande Valley in the winter is definitely a bucket list item for me. My husband and I took a year off to RV almost a decade ago and sold everything we owned except what we could store in a 10 by 15 foot climate controlled storage unit. Let me state here that there was no feeling more freeing than determining most of the stuff we had was just that, stuff. The things that mattered to us were photos, quilts, paintings, and a few other sentimental items. The rest was stuff, and we got rid of it pretty quickly and without regret. While on our year-long journey as eccentric nomads, we RV'd in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas from January through part of March, which turned out to be prime birding season. I started shooting photography in 2012, so I had a few years of experience under my belt. Even so, I felt out of my league around true birdwatchers with their binoculars and birding photographers with their massive camera lenses. They knew the sounds before they saw the birds. They were serious about their hobby and about their craft. We saw beautiful and exotic birds like green jays, kiskadees, and chacalacas at the World Birding Centers and Texas State Parks. I would nerd out like Steve Martin in the big year if I went there today. A bonus that time of year is the citrus farms are producing oranges and ruby red grapefruits. Farmers markets offer fresh produce that you won't see anywhere else in the state due to the warmer climate in the valley. We enjoyed the sweetest carrots we've ever tasted when we were camping there. Which Texas landmark screams Texas to you? While I hate to be obvious on this answer, the Alamo will always be my number one answer to this question. I've never done or seen a survey on it, but I'm willing to bet it's the most recognizable Texas landmark to visitors from around the world. I'm sure Dallas Cowboy owner Jerry Jones would like to say AT&T Stadium in Arlington would be at the top, but I think John Wayne and Billy Bob Thornton, who played Davy Crockett in the Alamo movies, knocked the football stadium out of the running for the top spot. Likely, the stadium isn't even in the top 20 spots. As I am unaffiliated when it comes to pro football, I'm comfortable with my answer. If you had to sum up Texas in one word, what would it be? For me, Texas is home. I lived a few years in another state, but every visit back to Texas meant the world to me. In fact, when we crossed the state line, I would open the windows to fill my lungs with Texas air. The older I've gotten, the more this resonates. I've visited quite a few states and a handful of countries, but there's no other place I want to live than Texas. And having lived in more than 20 cities and towns in the Lone Star State, I can't say I have a favorite place or a favorite region. They all have a certain beauty to offer. No matter where I am, as long as it's Texas, I'm home. Well, that's all she wrote for this episode. I sure hope you enjoyed it. You can follow me on social media at How Big Is Texas or on my blog, howbigistexas.com. If you like this podcast, y'all please take the time to give me a Texas size friendly review. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, from Texas, safe travels.